Welcome to Little Steps Big Gains and a video with tips for preventing freezing and shuffling. Now I have an entire video dedicated to freezing and I'm putting a link of that video in the description below. But here we're going to talk about tips for preventing freezing and shuffling. So first off, what is freezing? Okay, so freezing is a word that describes episodes when we are suddenly unable to initiate movement or continue locomotion. My patients will tell me, I just feel stuck or like my feet are glued to the floor. Very common triggers include stressful conditions, especially time-constraint situations, turning, approaching or entering through a confined space, especially doorways, or situations where we need to change our gait pattern or speed. So if those are the most common triggers, what can we do to prevent freezing in those situations? Well, I'd like to take us back to math class. Okay, I once heard that walking is like a complex math problem. And this makes sense because there are so many components for one output. For example, if I go to take a step, I need to map out my foot placement, kind of calculate my stride length, coordinate my timing, all of these components for one output, one step. So if we think of walking like this complex problem, what do all of those triggers we just talked about, what do they have in common? They make our problem that much more complicated. So while we don't exactly know what causes freezing, we know two things. The more complicated we make it, the harder it is to master. The more simplified we make it, the easier it is to manage. So what do we need to do to not complicate this? And what can we do to simplify it? So first off, how do we not complicate our problem? Well, we need to avoid dual tasking. Dual tasks are those everyday activities that require multitasking, either physically like carrying a cup of water or mentally, cognitively, such as walking while talking. The trouble here is that we have just complicated our problem. Any time that our attention is divided, or we have to switch between tasks, we are at a higher risk for freezing. Even walking while talking can shorten our stride length and cause shuffling. So what can we do? We need to remove distractions. Physically, this includes remove clutter, clear away obstacles. Mentally, this includes not thinking about your grocery list while you're walking up to the grocery store. Maybe if you're a loved one, you know not to walk and talk at the same time. So if we want to refrain from complicating our problem, we need to avoid dual tasking. Next, how do we simplify our problem? Well, we can break it down and solve individual components. For example, number one, we can simplify our stride length. We can do this through adding targets, tape on the floor, agility dots, our rubber dots that don't slip or slide, floor patterns. And maybe you've learned this as a therapist or you yourself have Parkinson's disease and you have encountered this, but now you know why. You have simplified the problem. You have taken out all these components of mapping out your foot placement, maneuvering obstacles, coordinating movements, simplified all of it to only focus on the one target, that one step ahead of you. I have found this to be very effective and applicable in situations like the bathroom. I put tape on the floor, mapped out pathways for individuals just to focus on that one target ahead of them. That's also why this is one of the strategies I bring up in my video below on tips during a freeze. Visualize the one step ahead of you, focus on that. So that is one strategy to simplify our problem. Number two, simplify our stride timing. Studies have shown that individuals who struggle with freezing have a difficult time regulating stride to stride timing. So how can we simplify this? We can reduce all of the calculations and walk to a beat. I love counting by threes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And we just walk to the beat, okay? Music, singing, metronomes. They have free apps that you can look up, Play Store, free apps for metronomes that you can put in your ear, walk to the beat. If you're a caregiver, tap on your thigh. I do that all the time as a therapist. Here we go. And I tap on my thigh, or you can snap your fingers. But this is another way to completely simplify our problem, walking to a beat. Now that we know how to simplify stride length and stride timing, I want to teach you a technique that integrates both, that is very effective for both freezing and shuffling. It is called a step prediction strategy. All right, so this is where we have a destination. And if it's a faraway destination, I break it up into closer targets. We point to that target and I say, I want you to make it there in as few steps as possible. Suddenly we're not focused on anything else, all distractors. We have to make it there in as few steps as possible. Very effective for shuffling and freezing. If we're also struggling, I might add a beat to the stride so that we can help with the timing there as well. So a few applications. I am an occupational therapist, so I focus on function, somebody's ability to be independent. Therefore, we're at the recliner and I say, hey, let's head to the bathroom. I count the number of steps it takes them to get to the toilet. Let's say it takes 18 to 19 steps. We go back and I say, I want you to do it again, but in 12 steps or less. Suddenly we are taking beautiful big steps to make it there in 12 steps or less. That is so phenomenal. I say, I want you to do that every single time you go to the bathroom. Count your steps and do it in 12 or less. If you're taking more than 12, it means you're shuffling. Great feedback. Another strategy, we're in the parking lot. We have to make it to the front door of the grocery store. I break it down, point out the next parking yellow line, and I say, I want you to make it there in 5 steps. We make it there. Next one, next one. Maybe we add a beat. Break it down, step prediction strategy. I also use this for homework, part of a home exercise program. Did this all the time when I used to do home health. I picked out 2 targets in the house. Let's start at, destination A. Okay, I need you to make it to point B in 10 steps or less. We take beautiful steps there. I'll teach you a few turning strategies. We turn around, give me 10 steps back. We're focusing on quality, big amplitude movements, there and back. I want you to do that 5 times, 3 times a day. Great home exercise. So that is a technique that can really help a step prediction strategy. Last but not least, let's talk about turning and pivoting, especially for individuals who struggle with freezing and shuffling. Okay, let's go back to math. Turning and pivoting is actually very complicated. So we need to do 2 things. We need to not complicate this anymore, and we need to simplify it. So how do we not complicate this? We avoid dual tasking. This is actually extremely powerful. Studies have shown that combining 360-degree turns with dual tasking is the most important trigger for freezing. Stride to stride timing. Studies have shown that individuals who do not struggle with freezing slow their cadence with turns, while individuals who do struggle with freezing actually increase their cadence. So we have a hard time regulating there. So what can we do? Avoid distractions. Physical distractions such as clutter, obstacles, take those away. Mental distractions, no talking while turning. Let's avoid complicating this even more. All right, how do we simplify this? I'd like to teach you 2 strategies, techniques, okay? Number 1, side stepping. So much easier to sidestep than it is to do this whole pivot thing, okay? Especially if you struggle with freezing, it's a lot easier to unload and sidestep. Very effective. So what we can do to simplify this is widen the turns and sidestep there. I'm going to demonstrate what not to do and then what to do, okay? I will not sit on him. All right, so if we walk forwards and do a full pivot, it's a lot more complicated. Okay, now I'm going to widen the turn and side step in as few steps as possible. So widen your turns, side step. Second strategy, using a clock turn strategy. I read this in a research article and found it to be very effective. So for this, especially with 360-degree turns in confined spaces, think of a clock. One foot stays planted in the middle of the clock. The other foot goes around the clock like an arm, okay? Around and around, okay? One foot is planted, the other foot is moving. This actually simplifies things quite a bit. We don't have to map out where one foot goes and the other foot. We're actually visualizing because we can see a clock in our head. So it combines all of those strategies from earlier that we talked about to simplify our problem. So those are some really effective strategies for pivoting and turning. Remember sidestepping in your new clock turn strategy. So I hope that you found something educational and or applicable. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button below. Comment, let us all know and share what works for you to help other people. Comment section below. If you enjoyed this, check out my other videos on my channel, Little Steps, Big Gains. My vision is to have free videos, resources, and home exercise programs using my training and certifications, which are in the description below. I'd love it if you would subscribe to my channel. If you subscribe, you get notifications when new videos and programs come out. And if you find a program that you like, I'd love it if you would jump in and join along, because together, little steps, we can make some big gains.